The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
There are a growing number of teens who feel as if they were born into the wrong bodies, born the wrong sex. We're going to take you inside one family's struggle with a child who is transgender.
The Cook County Forest Preserves are turning 100, but the treasures within go back thousands of years.
The largest property tax hike ever is headed to the doorsteps of Chicago homeowners, more than $500 million. Mayor Emanuel is desperate to balance the city's budget and cover pension payments. But many are fuming over the proposal. Stay with us for these stories and much more tonight on In the Loop.
Hello, I'm Chris Bury.
And I'm Lauren Cohn. Welcome to In the Loop. Caitlyn Jenner's public transformation and the military's changing policies are drawing new attention to increasing numbers of people who are identifying as transgender, people that feel as if they were born in the wrong body.
One Chicago hospital provides a unique program for children and adolescents who identify as transgender. As Barbara Pinto reports, the choices for these young people and their families are complicated.
17-year-old Emmett Paschal, a senior at Warren Township High School in north suburban Gurnee, seems like any other teenage boy. Until he talks about his childhood.
My life as Emily is still my life now, and my life as Emmett was my life then. I see myself as the same person. I cherish all of my memories, even if it's with a different name, even if it's with a ponytail. I keep every picture.
His parents do too, on the walls of their home. The little girl in the pink dress with the sweet smile is Emmett, who was born Emily.
As a little girl, he didn't present as a little girl. He was the leader in the neighborhood and made up the games, and all the kids followed, and you know, he didn't take too much guff from anyone either. So perhaps he acted more like a boy than we ever wanted to believe.
The Paschals thought they were raising a tomboy until junior year of high school, when their oldest child was hospitalized 5 times with suicidal depression. Emmett had no explanation for his depression until he read about gender dysphoria online and realized his intense frustration was with a female body that didn't match his male identity. That moment changed everything.
So there's a relief in that, but then there's also this immense fear and sadness of, well, how am I going to accomplish this? Is everyone going to accept me? I'm never going to be born a male.
I was scared. I didn't want my girl presenting as a boy. I didn't want my girl going through a phase where he was going to be ridiculed.
The Paschals found answers and care at the Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital Gender and Sex Development Program, one of only a handful of similar programs nationwide.
I think there's a misconception sometimes out there that a program such as ours is intervening medically, or God forbid, surgically in young children. That's not what this program does, and not what programs like it across the country do.
Pediatrician Robert Garofalo heads the Division of Adolescent Medicine that provides a combination of psychological and medical care.
Our job is to sort of tell people what we know about the science, tell people what we know about the options, and then have them as families make a decision that's in their best interest.
Those decisions, particularly for children and adolescents, can be complex and controversial. Some of those options include drugs that temporarily block puberty, and for older teens, hormones that cause more permanent changes, estrogen to bring on female puberty, and testosterone to bring on male puberty. Like all drugs, there are side effects, including increased risks of cancers and heart disease. But there are few studies on long-term use of these drugs among people who are transgender. The studies that have been done indicate much higher rates of suicide in the transgender community, 41%, compared to less than 5% in the general population. They also are more likely to suffer from higher instances of depression and substance abuse. And gender is complex in childhood.
A certain percentage of young people or children who present as gender nonconforming as children may not persist as gender nonconforming when they're adolescents or adults. Nobody really knows the exact percentage, and nobody really knows, what are the factors that are going to contribute to what might cause someone to persist or not to persist.
Those questions concern activist Peter LaBarbera, president of the Center for Morality. He believes medical decisions resulting in permanent change, such as surgery or cross-sex hormones, should be delayed until adulthood.
Our hearts go out to the parents. We know these are very difficult issues, but radical gender surgeries are often not the answer. We see studies which show that adults who go through sex reassignment surgeries are often still depressed, still suicidal after going through these body disfiguring operations.
We don't offer anything that would have any long-lasting negative or irreversible effect unless this is truly a kid who's older, who can make a wise decision, whose family is supportive.
Dr. Scott Leibowitz is a child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Lurie Children's Gender and Sex Development Program.
I would argue that we can't be worried about some theoretical cancer that might be happening in 20 years if we don't have a child or an adolescent at all, if they commit suicide.
That is why the Pascals had little doubt about moving ahead with medical intervention.
It was truly a life or death situation for us, so it was something we just felt we needed to do.
With the help of his healthcare team at Lurie to get insurance to cover the $12,000 cost, Emmett recently had top surgery, essentially a double mastectomy to remove breast tissue, and he started on daily doses of testosterone to bring on male puberty. He's also legally changed his name from Emily to Emmett.
I feel more correct. I feel like I'm starting to fit, like the puzzle is coming together.
For his parents and younger sister, they're growing accustomed to a new name, new pronouns, and much more.
There was a whole mourning phase. You're losing your child, and so that's what it felt like. We were losing a child through this process, but now it's come to where we realize we're not losing our child. It's just a different part of Emmett.
The seismic shift in the Pascals' family dynamic seems smoother these days as Emmett thinks about his family and his future.
They want me to dream and they want me to succeed, and I know they'll always be there to love me. And that's something really good to have when your acceptance in society is something that's questionable at best.
I want Emmett to feel comfortable in this world wherever he goes.
For In the Loop, I'm Barbara Pinto.
And Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital recently received a grant from the National Institutes of Health to study the long-term outcomes of medical treatment on transgender youth. This study is one of the first ever done on the population in the U.S. Joining us now to talk more about transgender teens and other trending stories are Maze Jackson, political analyst for the Intelligence Group, Sarah Burnett, political reporter for the Associated Press, and Kevin Koval, poet, author, and artistic director of Young Chicago Authors. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Maze, let me ask you, are children too young to be making this decision? What is age appropriate here?
You know, I think that children may be a little bit too young to be making this decision before they turn 18. I think that there are a lot of things that our kids want, and they're trying to figure a lot out. And so I think that we really need to slow down a little bit on this. I think that with the study that they plan to have, it's going to force them to go ahead and do these surgeries at an earlier age, but I really do think we should slow this process down.
Sarah, you heard the parents talk about this as, a life or death situation, but when you don't know the long-term side effects, how do you weigh the risk, especially as a parent?
Well, not being a parent myself, I think I'm going to leave that to parents themselves. I think every case is different. Every family, every young person is facing something slightly different. It's hard for me or for a lot of other people to be able to say that.
It's a heart-wrenching, story to watch. Kevin, there's been so much publicity with Caitlyn Jenner coming out and Jazz Jennings, the 14-year-old who's getting her own show. Has that changed our discussion about this? Is there more acceptance, less acceptance?
Well, I hope we move towards a broader acceptance. I think part of what this is that we are fixed in a rigidity of gender norms. And part of what this is about, I think, is expanding the notion and the spectrum and making it messy because it's gender, like a lot of constructs of identity, there's a spectrum, there's a liminality, and we're uncomfortable as a culture of that spectrum. But I think transgender youth are pushing our culture towards a much richer place in understanding ourselves as a whole. And so I think it's really important.
Sounds like it's good to have a conversation about it, which is what we are doing. So thanks for your thoughts regarding transgender teens. And now a costly blow to homeowners and more cops on the beat. More than $500 million. That's the amount Mayor Emanuel is seeking to get from taxpayers. In his 2016 budget proposal, homeowners will feel the brunt of the pain in order to balance the city's budget. While many agree it's important to get the city back on track, some are concerned about who is paying the cost.
What we need to do is raise corporate taxes. There are plenty of wealthy people in Illinois that could help fund this.
We owe it to our city and to the generations who come after us to do what is right, even when it is hard.
Included in the mayor's 2016 budget agenda, putting more cops on Chicago streets. With the homicide rate up, is this the answer?
I think the lack of investment in our most vulnerable communities is a direct cause of violence, and just putting more cops on the street is not going to address that problem.
New Year's Eve, Chicago style, dubbed Chi-Town Rising. The city is promoting a New Year's Eve event, hoping tourists will flock to town in cold weather.
I think it's a really good idea. I think it could bring a lot of good revenue to the city, and I think it would have a good turnout. I don't know if I would go just because it's really cold that time of year, so I probably wouldn't go out, but I do think it's a good idea.
All right, so a lot to talk about. Let's begin with the budget. Let's start there. Mays, your reaction to this proposal?
You know, I look at the budget and I think, boy, it's got to be a give somewhere. And so I think that what the mayor did was step out here and really seek to address a lot of issues that we've kind of been sweeping under the rug. Now, I don't know how I personally feel about how those taxes are going to affect me individually. And I think the ask of 3 different tax increases at one time is going to be a stretch for the aldermen. So I think it'll be real interesting to see how it comes out.
I want to get back to the tax structure in a minute, but Sarah, first, let me just ask you, with your experience, is this going to pass, and what happens in Springfield?
Well, I think the mayor himself is fairly confident that it will pass. He probably wouldn't have proposed all of it if he weren't. The big question remains Springfield, because the key piece of this is that exemption for homeowners whose value is $250,000 or less. That needs approval from the legislature. And in particular, Governor Rauner, who hasn't taken a stance on it, but has so far indicated, there are things he wants first, and he's not getting them. And so I think that's where the mayor may run into his trouble.
And when you mentioned the $250,000, Kevin, we talk about what's fair and what's not. So when Mays just brought up the tax structure, we've got the property tax increase over 4 years. The first punch is coming, next year in 2015 to 2016 when you get your taxes. So what happens then to the middle class and the business owners? Are they going to leave?
Yeah, I think that it's a continuation of the cities for sale. And, there really is a push to get working people out of the city and making the city new again. I think that this tax moment is really about limited imagination, greed, corporate kowtowing, and a continuation of neoliberal politics as usual. I think that there are some other solutions that we aren't really talking about. Like, it would be great if politicians and elected officials, city agents had to send their kids to public school, and we could use that money then to fill in some of these gaps in the budgets. I did a little bit of math before coming. Like, if Emanuel were to use that $60,000 per year that it costs to send his kids to the lab school over 10 years, that's $600,000. If it was a requirement for folks to go to these public schools, I guarantee the schools would be better. And so I think that there are some. I think we need to reimagine how we conceive of this city, who's it for, and how we make it more equitable across the board, because that's essential.
So, Mays, when you do the math then, and you talk about things like the garbage fee that's being added and the ride-sharing fees and e-cigarette fees, who gets hurt the most here, in your opinion?
You know, I think when you talk about that, it's the everyday consumer gets hurt the most, and the people that most likely least can afford it. But I do think that there were some considerations taken. I do think that if we can get this thing done in Springfield, it will be very helpful in helping with the under $250,000 exemption. You know, I have looked at this budget and I'm still trying to tear it apart. I just don't know how we get around the solution, this pension solution. And we've really got to get to a fix there, because it just feels a bit unfair that we're going to take a $500 million tax increase from the city, and we know we've got one coming from CPS as well, and we don't necessarily get any new additional services. So I am very concerned.
So, Sarah, what do you do? Because we don't have the courts on our side. Mayor Rahm Emanuel hasn't been able to get his pension reform, and we don't see that those in the unions are moving towards paid contribution at any time.
Right. And Lauren, this is the key problem here, is that the pension problem was allowed over decades to get to this situation where it is $20 billion in debt, the worst funded pension systems of any U.S. city. The credit rating agencies are taking us down. You know, it is, as the mayor said, this is a critical point right here. The courts have not let them do anything. Yes, this is hitting people hard, but it has been a long time coming.
Kevin, I got a quote for you. Rahm Emanuel said, Chicago's, quote, thriving, but our fiscal challenges are significant. Are we really thriving?
I don't think we are as a city. I think a lot of his corporate buddies are. I think part of what we need to do is share the burden with the surrounding counties. You know, I think that they benefit from having Chicago being the kind of working class town that it is. They're close for a reason. And so I think there needs to be just a radical redistribution of wealth, and I think that the suburbs need to share the burden. I mean, as opposed to taxing folks in the city, I think that there should be a suburban commuter tax or something like that.
Commuter tax.
I mean, that I don't think is horrible.
But we're picking and choosing here.
Right, and it seems like then we're going to be moving towards a San Francisco type of situation where you got to pay a toll to get into the city. And I you know, that commuter tax really makes me nervous, because as I look at how the housing has been, how particularly blacks have been pushed to the south suburbs, if they don't have a city sticker and then they're coming in, they're going to be hit as hard because they're coming to visit their family. So I think there's a lot we got to look at.
That's real. I mean, for me, it's more about the redistribution of the property tax. You know, I think that there should be, if we really believe in equity in this country, which we give lip service to, but of course we never enact, then we would redistribute property tax based on just the number of kids who are going to a school.
All right, let me transition in redistribution to the police. 319 police officers, Sarah, are moving to the streets, replaced by civilians who are going to get paid less. Can we afford this?
Well, can we afford a whole lot of things that we're doing? I think the mayor sees this as a way to make this a little bit easier to swallow, to pick up some support from aldermen who he needs. I'm not sure that is a huge selling point. I'm not sure that anyone who is about to see all these taxes hit them feels better about 300 or so new police officers spread out across a city as large as Chicago.
The high crime rate.
No, I really don't think it will change the crime rate. We really have got to stop looking at police, to me, as the solution. We have to look at really what are the economic opportunities that are in these neighborhoods where the high crime is occurring. You know, if you eliminate 5 zip codes, this is the safest city in one of the safest cities in the world. So what are we doing to infuse not just police presence, but economic benefits and opportunities, and bringing people up, and more than just an apprenticeship program, but really something that translates into teaching people how to fish instead of always waiting for a social service
Kevin,
check.
do we have to take the communities back ourselves? So they do the take back the streets mentality?
Well, and I think people are doing that. I think we saw that in the fight to save Diet High School, and I think the mayor can't stand in the room with people to really hear from his constituents. So I think that's a problem. I think the answer certainly is not more police, especially in a moment where police are murdering black bodies at an increasingly and alarming rate.
All right, finally, we have a little bit more information about this New Year's Eve celebration that's coming to Chicago, it sounds like. Take a listen.
Chi-Town Rising is a mega event for New Year's Eve, and we think it's a new tradition for how Chicago celebrates New Year's. We're going to have multiple stages with musical entertainment starting at 6 p.m. in the evening. There'll be art exhibitions, interactive sponsor activations, lots of chances to meet and greet and talk with people. 11 o'clock, the big show starts, live on TV. We're going to have a 90-minute broadcast showing musical talent, guest celebrities, of course a countdown, and a rise of a giant star up the side of the Hyatt building with a big fireworks show at midnight.
Mays, will I see you there? You going to the party?
If he wants any black people to come to that, he's gonna need a lot of heaters. That's all I gotta say, because it's too cold in Chicago in January to be partying outside.
Sarah, they say it's privately funded, but we all know that we're going to be paying something for this.
I mean, privately funded or not, does it look real good right now to the people of Chicago? Like, we got money for that, but not for that, no matter what pot it's coming out of.
Kevin, what do we do if it snows with the fireworks?
I mean, it'll be Chicago per usual, but it's lame. I mean, this is just a kind of weak attempt to be a generic city. Although I do like the name because I think it predicts the impending People's Revolution.
Uh-oh.
Oh, what? I can't wait to see that.
Shy Rising is coming,
Shy
you know what I'm saying?
Rising.
Whether they like it or not.
I hear that.
Thank you so much to Mays Jackson, Sarah Burnett, and Kevin Koval for all your time today. And now here's Chris Bury with a story about a place rich in history and this year is celebrating its 100th anniversary.
That's right, Lauren. With more than 69,000 acres, the Forest Preserves of Cook County is one of the largest and oldest of its kind in the country. And now scientists are discovering a rich history of that land dating back thousands of years. For decades, Cook County's forest preserves have been popular spots for family reunions, fishing, biking, and sledding. But unknown to most visitors, they are also the home of some ancient discoveries.
Very few people realize the wealth of archaeological resources that are here.
The research compiled from Forest Preserve archaeological sites tells a story dating back more than 10,000 years. That history yields critical clues about the people who once inhabited the land and how they used it.
Here's where we found a projectile point yesterday.
That was would have dated to about 800
Yeah,
AD.
500 to 800.
Archaeologically, Cook County is a very exciting place. It's full of all sorts of archaeological sites dating from when the glaciers first receded all the way through to large prehistoric village sites. And then you move into the early historic period and you've got trading posts. You've got places where the Europeans first made contact with Native Americans, all the way up to World War II, where there are prisoner of war camps here in the Forest Preserve. So everything is here. This is the third largest metropolitan area in the United States. Most places like that, those sites would have been destroyed. But because of the Forest Preserve property, they've been preserved.
Hey guys. Did you just start this hole or are you about into it?
Our focus now is to get boots on the ground, crew out in the field, recording and identifying and documenting site locations.
The types of artifacts that we're looking for are usually the remnants of a stone tool technology. And this technology was used for thousands and thousands of years. This little bag is the artifact bag. And if we didn't have this simple technology, none of the things that we'd be doing today would matter because we wouldn't know where we found those artifacts.
Preserve officials say if the sites are not protected, then what's hidden in the land could be in danger. That beyond natural threats such as flooding and erosion, looting and even recreation could cause damage.
Someone might be riding their bicycle, not on a bike path, but just through the woods or something, and have no idea that they're on top of or right next to an important archaeological site. So one of the things that we're helping the Forest Preserve with is protection and preservation. Knowing where the sites are ahead of time, we can help the Forest Preserve say, let's put this recreational activity over here rather than over here. There's been a complete renewed interest of how important the resource is and how important it is that it's protected.
Joining us now is the General Superintendent for the Forest Preserves of Cook County, Arnold Randall. Welcome. Some of that ancient history is fascinating, but some of the more modern past is, shall we say, a little bit checkered. This is before your watch, but what are you doing to clean up the Forest Preserve's image?
So under the leadership of Toni Preckwinkle, who everybody knows as the county board president, she's also the president of the Forest Preserve Board, and her direction to us was to clean up Forest Preserve government, make it more efficient, transparent, hire quality people. We were actually under a Shackman hiring process When we got here, we weren't in compliance with that. We're a government that is now in compliance with that. So we have a hiring plan that's fair to everybody, that we hire quality people, not just people who know somebody.
One of the things that you've been trying to do is to get more city folks out to the forest preserves. How are you doing that?
So we're reaching into the city. We're working with community groups. We're working with churches. Schools are a very important part of that. We're bringing some of what we do to the city, but at the same time, we're inviting them to come out to the forest preserves. We're also starting things like camping for families. In the past, you couldn't camp in the forest preserve unless you're part of an organized group. Now you can go online or you can call and you can make a camp reservation at 5 new locations around the county. So we're really reaching in. We recognize that part of city life is very stressful. This was recognized 100 years ago. That's why the forest preserves are protected. That we want to create opportunities for city residents to really come out and enjoy nature and let go of some of their urban tension.
Well, the Forest Preserve used to have camping many, many years ago, but you haven't had it for about 50 years.
Yeah.
What took so long?
I think it was probably just a hard thing to manage, and if you're an inefficient government, then you don't want to deal with issues like that. We recognize that one way to get people connected is to get them out camping under the stars and then help them. We also program our campsites, so we recognize a lot of people probably never camped before. So we'll have program staff there to lead you on hikes, teach you how to start a fire and do your cookout and do some other fun things, fishing, archery, all those kind of things.
One of your big things has been to restore native landscapes, but you've got some folks in some suburbs who are a little angry because they've been mowing lawn and taking out brush and so on right adjacent to that forest preserve property, and they claim that they're getting ticketed for it. Why is that happening?
So forest preserves are not parks. I mean, when you go to a picnic grove, those are mowed lawns, but mostly we're maintaining a natural state because there's animals and plants and things that exist in the forest preserve, as you saw in the piece, that don't exist anywhere else. For a private resident to take public land and expand their property, in effect, is not appropriate. And in the past, the Forest Preserve looked the other way, but in the last 5 or 6 years, we've actively gone and notified people that they've been encroaching. In some cases, they've not just mowed lawns, they've put playground equipment or garages. We recognize that's not appropriate or right. And we've reclaimed 40 acres or so of land that was being encroached upon over the last few years.
You've got a very ambitious plan. Of your nearly 70,000 acres, only about 10% of it is considered in excellent condition. If you're going to be restoring this over the next 25 years, what's that going to cost?
It's going to be expensive.
How expensive?
Well, I think we're talking about in the millions of dollars and increasing our budget over time. So we recognize this is not the current environment to increase those kind of revenues, but we're trying to do things on the private side. We're raising private dollars. The Forest Preserve has its own foundation now, so we raise money. A lot of that's for programming, but also can help us with that work. We go to foundations, other foundations, and we're certainly looking to really use our volunteer base. We have a lot.
At least no new tax money for now.
Absolutely not. No, we're going to use what we have.
Congratulations on your 100-year anniversary.
Thank you. And I invite everybody to come out and enjoy it.
All right, thank you. And Lauren, you're taking part in an upcoming event at one of the forest preserves. Tell us about that.
Yes, Chris, this Saturday, September 26th, I will be the MC for the WYCC Walk for Health, a 3K family walk to support health and wellness. Now, the walk is in conjunction with the Forest Preserve's 100th anniversary and free and open to the public. Registration begins at 8 a.m. We hope you're going to come out and join us. Well, that's it for this week. And for more information about our show and WYCC Walk for Health, log on to wycc.org. And on next week's show, an inside look at a Chicago area project that's been under construction for more than 40 years, the Deep Tunnel Project. That's next time on In the Loop. Until then, for Chris Bury, I'm Lauren Cohn. Good night. From now through Sunday, the Cook County Forest Preserve is hosting fun family events in celebration of their 100-year anniversary. Join in one or several of the activities happening near you.